My name is Audrey. I'm just your average 30-year-old working as an accountant at my dad's company, managing spreadsheets more often than social interactions. Life was mostly work, home, and the occasional dinner with my dad. Parties weren't really my thing, but I went to one because my friend Amy insisted. "Come on, Audrey, you need to get out more," she'd said. So, there I was, in a crowded living room, clutching a soda and feeling out of place. That's when I first saw Jake. He was hard to miss, really tall, like a basketball player or something. I was trying to make myself as small as possible when he walked over with a beer in hand and a smile that seemed too bright for the dim room. "Hey there, I'm Jake," he said, offering a hand that swallowed mine up when I shook it. "You look like you could use a better drink." I chuckled, nervously adjusting my glasses. "Oh, this is fine. Soda's good." "White wine is much better," he grinned, heading to the makeshift bar. While he was gone, Amy buzzed by, whispering, "He's cute, right? And he's talking to you." Jake returned with 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. "So, what brings you to this chaos?" he asked, gesturing around at the noisy room. "My friend dragged me here. I'm not much for parties," I admitted. "Me neither," Jake said with a laugh. "I'm just here 'cause my buddy insisted. Said I needed to mingle more, or some crap like that." We both laughed, and for the first time I felt a little more at ease. "Yeah, same here." "So, what do you do when you're not being dragged to parties?" he asked, taking a sip of his wine. "I'm an accountant. It's not exciting. Just numbers and more numbers," I explained, expecting him to lose interest. Cool. Numbers are important," he said. "I work in marketing myself. Lots of numbers there too, you know, budgets and stuff." We chatted more about work, and surprisingly, Jake made it sound like the most interesting conversation ever. We moved away from the crowd, sitting on a couch in the corner. It felt like we were in our own little bubble, laughing and talking about everything from favorite TV shows to where we grew up. As the party wound down, Jake looked at me, his eyes sincere. "I had a really good time tonight, Audrey. Can I get your number? Maybe we can go out for dinner sometime?" I was taken aback. No one had ever been interested in me like this. "Sure, that'd be nice," I said, giving him my number and feeling a mix of excitement and disbelief. The next day, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Jake from the party. Wanna grab dinner tonight?" My heart did a little flip. Dinner with Jake sounded way better than sitting at home watching reruns of old sitcoms. I agreed, and that night, we met at a cozy little Italian place downtown. Jake was already there, looking casual in a fitted t-shirt and jeans. He stood up when I walked in, his smile wide. "Hey, Audrey. You made it." "Yeah, I almost chickened out," I said, taking the seat across from him. "But here I am." We ordered pasta and talked about everything under the sun, our jobs, our families, even our favorite childhood memories. Jake had a way of making me feel like the only person in the room. It was refreshing. We laughed about stupid things, like how I once accidentally wore 2 different shoes to work, and he shared stories of his worst marketing disasters. We laughed, and the night just flew by. When we finally left the restaurant, Jake suggested we take a walk. The city was quieter, and the cool night air felt good. We strolled along the river, talking about everything and nothing. It was like we'd known each other forever. Our second date was even better. Jake took me to a local jazz bar. We drank overpriced cocktails, and I even danced a bit, something I never thought I'd do. Jake was a good dancer, and his easygoing vibe made me forget all about my awkwardness. The night ended with him walking me to my door. "Thanks for the awesome night," I said, feeling a bit shy. "My pleasure," Jake replied, leaning in. Our lips met in a kiss that was surprisingly soft and sweet. It felt like the start of something real. Things moved fast after that. We spent more time together, meeting each other's friends, and even our families. My dad was a bit skeptical at first, but he warmed up to Jake pretty quickly. Jake's parents were lovely, treating me like part of the family from the start. One evening, Jake and I were at his parents' house for dinner. His mom, Martha, was bustling around the kitchen, while his dad, Frank, was telling stories from his younger days. Jake was always a troublemaker, Frank laughed. Couldn't keep him still for a minute. Yeah, he hasn't changed much, I teased, nudging Jake. Hey, I'm not that bad, Jake protested, grinning. Martha set a steaming dish of lasagna on the table. Dig in, everyone. As we ate, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in a long time. It was like I was part of something bigger, a real family. Over the next few months, we spent almost every waking moment together. He introduced me to his friends, who were a wild bunch, but they welcomed me like one of their own. We had game nights, barbecues, and even a couple of spontaneous road trips. Life with Jake was a whirlwind, but in the best possible way. He made me feel special, like I was the only woman in the world who mattered. It's been a few months since Jake and I tied the knot. The wedding was nothing fancy, but it was perfect for us. I even found myself liking how I looked in my dress, something I didn't expect. We posted pictures online, and it was nice to see everyone's happy reactions. We started off living in a small rented apartment. It was ours, and it was filled with laughter and plans for the future. But life has a way of changing when you least expect it. One evening, Jake came up to me while I was cooking dinner. He had this serious look on his face, the kind he gets when he's made a decision. Babe, I've been thinking, he started, leaning against the counter. My folks are getting on in years, and they really shouldn't be on their own anymore. What do you think about moving in with them to help out? I was surprised, but it made sense. His parents had always been welcoming to me, treating me more like a daughter than a daughter-in-law. I think it's a great idea, I said, smiling at him. Let's do it. Moving in with Jake's parents was smoother than I expected. They welcomed us with open arms, happy to have more life and energy in their old house. It felt good, being able to help them out. A few weeks into our new living arrangement, we were all sitting around the dinner table when Jake brought up something new. The house needs some serious repairs, he said. His parents nodded, looking a bit embarrassed. I was thinking, Jake continued, since Mom and Dad don't have the money to cover it, maybe we could use our savings. What do you think? I was taken aback. We weren't rich, and our savings weren't exactly a fortune. I hesitated, unsure, but before I could say anything, Martha started crying. Oh, I just hate the thought of asking you kids for help like this, but the roof's leaking and the winter's coming. Seeing her tears, I couldn't say no. Okay, I said softly. We'll figure it out, don't worry. We agreed to split the costs, but almost immediately after, Jake dropped another bomb. I got some bad news today at work, he sighed one evening, looking defeated. They're cutting back, and I've been demoted. Salaries slashed. My heart sank. So, what does that mean for the repairs? It means I can't put in my share. Not right now, he said, avoiding my eyes. So, just like that, the financial burden fell on me. Every time his parents thanked me for fixing up the house, praising how great it was looking, I felt a mix of pride and resentment building up inside me. I loved them, but the situation was straining, more than I wanted to admit. The house looked completely different. 6 months of hard work, and everything from the plumbing to the furniture was brand new. I felt a mix of pride and worry, seeing all the changes. I'd paid for everything, after all. Jake's parents insisted on throwing a dinner party to celebrate. You've done so much for us, Audrey. We can't thank you enough, Martha said as she set the table with her best china. The smell of roast beef filled the air, and laughter echoed around the newly painted walls. Halfway through dinner, however, the atmosphere shifted. Jake's mom suddenly burst into tears, her hands trembling as she set down her fork. I can't believe we're going to lose this beautiful home after all the work Audrey put into it. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Lose it? What do you mean? There was a heavy silence before Frank spoke, his voice low. We took out a mortgage years back. It's gotten to be too much. We owe $250,000, And if we don't pay up in 2 months, the bank will take the house. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But, all the money I put in, why didn't you tell me before? We didn't want to worry you, dear, his mom said, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Jake put his hand on my arm, his voice urgent. Audrey, you can help us out here. Your dad, he's got the means. Maybe he could. I pulled away, feeling cornered. You want me to ask my dad for $250,000? Just like that? Look, I know it's a lot, but think about it. This house will be ours one day. It'll be yours, Jake pressed, his eyes pleading. I spent a restless night tossing and turning, the weight of the request heavy on my chest. The next morning, I called my dad. I explained everything, the debt, the renovations, the predicament. My dad listened quietly on the other end of the line. When I finished, there was a long pause. I'll help, he finally said, but I'm not just handing over the money. I want receipts, I want agreements. I'm not going to see you taken advantage of. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by anxiety about how Jake would take the news. When I told him, he was clearly annoyed. Your dad doesn't trust me, he snapped. It's not about trust, I insisted, feeling my patience fray. It's about being smart with money. It's a lot of money, Jake. We need to be careful. Jake muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving me to wonder if we'd ever get past this. The agreement with my dad went through, and he transferred the money, all formal and documented. Jake's parents were grateful, their constant thanks grating on me as I signed papers and organized the financial rescue of their home. The whole situation left me feeling used. I began to question Jake's intentions, his love. Was it all just convenience? Marrying the daughter of a wealthy man? The doubts grew each day, festering like an untreated wound. The month following the mortgage ordeal was a blur. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I got the call that changed everything. It was my Aunt Linda on the line, her voice choked with tears. Audrey, your father, he's had a heart attack. He didn't make it. Hearing that news felt like being hit by a truck. My dad was gone, just like that. The grief was overwhelming, but I had no time to process it. There were funeral arrangements to be made, relatives to inform, and a million little details to sort out. In the midst of this chaos, I came back home earlier than usual one afternoon after meeting with the funeral agency. The house was supposed to be empty, so I quietly unlocked the front door, not wanting to disturb any lingering silence with my sobs. But the moment I stepped inside, I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Jake, his mother, and his father. They didn't hear me come in. I froze by the door, my hand still on the knob, and listened. I can't believe how easy it was to get her to cough up all that cash, Jake was saying, a harsh laugh escaping him. And now, with her old man out of the picture, I'll be free. Martha's voice chimed in, sickly sweet. Just be patient, honey. We've almost got everything we wanted. We just need to handle those receipts. Jake's disgust was palpable as he replied. I'm tired of playing the doting husband. She's just so, it disgusts me. And I've got Angie waiting. She's everything Audrey isn't. My heart stopped. Angie? He had someone else? The pain was immediate and sharp, a betrayal I hadn't even considered. Frank cautioned. Keep it together a bit longer. Once we get rid of those receipts, you can dump her and keep the money clean. And those receipts will be ashes soon enough, Jake snarled. I'll make sure of it. I couldn't listen anymore. The grief for my father mixed with the shock of betrayal, churning in my stomach. I slammed the door hard, making my presence known. Oh, Audrey, you're back early, Martha said, switching to her sweet old lady act, so fast it made my head spin. How's everything going with the funeral plans, dear? Fine, I managed to choke out, keeping my voice steady. Everything's under control. That evening, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The man I married, the family I trusted, they were nothing but con artists. They saw me as a walking bank account, nothing more. The next few days, I went through the motions. I nodded as Jake and his parents talked about the future, their future, filled with my money. Each word from them fueled my resolve. They didn't know it yet, but their deceitful game was about to come crashing down. I was going to make sure of it. After the last murmurs of condolences had faded and the final guests drifted out of the funeral, I stood outside my father-in-law's house, bracing myself. As we all shuffled inside, the false somberness from Jake and his parents was stifling. They had performed well at the funeral, their eyes brimming with crocodile tears, their hands clasped in feigned sorrow. But the real performance was about to begin, just us, no audience. The door clicked shut behind the last relative, and I watched. Watched as the veneer of grief melted off Jake's face, his features twisting into a smirk that chilled my blood. His parents weren't far behind, their mournful expressions dissolving into something hard and greedy. Jake wasted no time. "Audrey, it's time for you to go," he said, the cruel twist of his lips like a slap. "I'm done pretending." I felt my pulse quicken, but kept my face calm. "Go? Whatever do you mean?" "Don't act stupid, Audrey. I can't stand you," Jake sneered, his words like daggers. "I've got someone else, someone young and sexy. Not a dull, pathetic woman like you." Martha stepped forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "We were only putting up with you because of your money, darling. Now that your father's gone, and his money's done fixing this place, you're useless to us." Her words stung, each one a pointed thorn. "And the house? I paid for all this." I gestured around. "My money, remember?" Jake's grin grew wider. "Oh, those receipts? I found them in your dad's things, and burned them. They're gone, Audrey. Just like your money. They thought they had me cornered, thought they could discard me like trash." But I started laughing, quietly at first, then louder, my body shaking with each unrestrained burst. Tears streamed down my cheeks, not from sadness or pain, but from the sheer release of it all. They watched me, their smugness faltering into confusion. Jake's mother put a hand on his arm, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Why are you laughing?" Jake demanded, his voice a mix of irritation and bewilderment. I wiped the tears from my face, my laughter subsiding into chuckles. "Because, Jake, you're a fool. You all are. You think you played me, but I've known about your little games from the start." Their faces turned pale, the confidence draining away as quickly as it had surged. I stood up straighter, the laughter now a weapon sharpened by truth. "And another thing," I continued, the last traces of my laughter dying down to a serious, cold calm. "Those receipts you burned? They were copies. The real ones? Safely filed away with my lawyer, along with a few other interesting documents." Jake's eyes widened, his earlier bravado crumbling. "What do you mean? What documents?" "Oh, you'll see," I said, a slow, knowing smile spreading across my face. "You'll all see very soon." As I left them standing there, stunned and silent, I knew the battle was just beginning. But it was a battle I was now ready to fight, armed with the truth and nothing left to lose. That evening, I drove to my dad's house, a place that now felt more like a sanctuary than ever. As soon as I settled in, I rang our family lawyer, Mr. Clarkson. "I need you to draft a preliminary request for the return of the $250,000 and send it to them. It's time they face the consequences," I said, my voice steady but filled with a resolve that had been forged in betrayal. Mr. Clarkson agreed without hesitation. "I'll take care of it immediately," he assured me, and true to his word, the letter was sent out the next day. A few days later, Jake called me, his voice frantic. "What's this letter we got? Why are you threatening us with court?" he stammered. I kept my cool, despite the satisfaction that pricked at me, hearing him squirm. "This is something we should discuss in person. I've asked Mr. Clarkson to handle it." "Meet me at his office," I said, and hung up before he could reply. The meeting was set, and when Jake and his parents walked into Mr. Clarkson's office, the air was thick with tension. They looked like trapped animals, eyes darting, looking for an escape that wasn't there. Mr. Clarkson wasted no time. As per the receipt your son signed when he accepted the $250,000 from my client's father, he began, his voice firm and commanding. There is a clause which stipulates that the lender reserves the right to demand repayment at any time. We are exercising that right now. Jake's face went white, his parents too, their earlier arrogance washed away by fear. But we don't have that kind of money right now, Jake pleaded, his voice cracking. That's not my client's concern. You entered into a legally binding agreement, and we expect it to be honored. Mr. Clarkson continued, his gaze unwavering. The desperation was palpable as Frank chimed in. Please, can't we work something out? We'll do anything. Mr. Clarkson and I exchanged a brief look before he answered. The only acceptable resolution here is for you to transfer the title of your house to my client, as compensation for the unreturned loan. Otherwise, we will see you in court. The words hung heavy in the room. Finally, seeing no other option, Jake and his parents nodded reluctantly. Mr. Clarkson slid a prepared contract across the table. Sign here, he instructed, his tone indicating no room for further discussion. With trembling hands, they signed the document, officially transferring ownership of the house to me. The house that I had unknowingly paid for, the house that was supposed to be a symbol of familial unity but had become a battleground of deceit. Later, I filed for divorce from Jake. It was uncontested, he knew he had no footing to challenge anything after everything that had happened. Standing in the doorway of the house that now legally belonged to me, watching Jake and his parents leave with their belongings, a smile spread across my face. Not out of malice, but liberation. It's been a whole year since I slammed the door on that chapter of my life. The divorce, taking back what was mine, it feels like a lifetime ago, but also just yesterday. Running Dad's company has been a wild ride. I remember sitting in his office that first day, the leather chair feeling too big, the desk cluttered with papers about deals and contracts I barely understood. But I learned, faster than I thought I could. Turns out, I'm pretty good at this. Who would have thought? I get updates about Jake and his family through the grapevine. Just last week, Amy dropped by my office, her eyes wide with the latest gossip. Guess what? Jake's little girlfriend dumped him. Left him flat. And his parents? They're squeezed into some tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I felt nothing. No joy from their downfall, no pain, just emptiness. They were just people I used to know, people who tried to use me, nothing more. Really? Well, life goes on, doesn't it? I responded, turning back to the spreadsheets on my desk. Audrey, aren't you even a bit happy? After all they did? Amy prodded, leaning against my desk. I looked up, met her gaze squarely. Amy, I'm too busy for schadenfreude. Running this company, keeping Dad's legacy alive, that's my life now. What happens to Jake or his parents, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Amy nodded, pushing off from the desk. You're better than I am then. I'd be throwing a party. I laughed, but it was short-lived. No parties. There's too much work to do. Have you seen the Henderson proposal? I'm thinking we should counter with. Always business with you. Amy teased, but she was smiling. All right, boss lady, I'll let you get back to it. After she left, I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the cityscape below. I thought about Jake and his parents, crammed into that tiny apartment. A part of me wondered if I should feel something, some sort of triumph, but there was nothing. The phone rang, snapping me out of my reverie. It was Marcus, our head of sales. Audrey, have you got a minute? There's a bit of a situation with one of the suppliers. On my way, I said, standing up. Problems, solutions, growth, losses, my days were full of these. And I loved it. The challenge, the rush of sealing a deal, the satisfaction of seeing my employees motivated and pushing forward. This was where I was meant to be. I thought I'd always be the quiet, reliable accountant in the background. But life had a funny way of pushing us into the unknown, into battles we never thought we'd fight.